Deshaun Watson has settled all but four of his civil cases. Statement that I can read here from Tony Busby. Um, says the cases against Deshaun Watson started with one phone call from one brave and strong woman. That woman was Ashley Solis. At the time of the call, she was just one of 100 of calls seeking legal assistance that her firm gets weekly. And on it goes here. Just today, I announced that all cases against Deshaun Watson, with the exception of four, have settled. We are working through the paperwork related to those settlements. Once we have done so, those particular cases will be dismissed. The terms and amounts of the settlements are confidential. We won't comment further on the settlements or those cases. As stated, Ashley Solis is one of the heroes of the story. Her case has not settled, and thus her story and that of the other three brave women will continue. I look forward to trying these cases in due course, consistent with other docket obligation and the court's schedule. Uh, Strange, weird, and awful circumstances that's been going on for a long time, but we are, I guess, we're moving forward today, if nothing else.
Well, to an extent, look, it had been previously reported. I know by Mike Florio. I don't know if it was somewhere else before that. That of these civil suits, I believe at the time it was 22 civil suits, and 18 of the women involved were reportedly willing to take a settlement that was $100,000 for each. And yet Watson decided not to go through with it because he kind of wanted an all or nothing deal, where either he settled all the cases or he didn't settle them. So perhaps this is him here and saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to settle the ones I can settle. Whether that ended up being for 100K or for more, we won't know. There obviously is the lawyer for all the plaintiffs. Uh, he pointed out it was confidential. So, look, I think for our purposes and for our perspective, what does it mean going forward? I still think if you're the NFL, I don't know that it changes all that much.
Right.
I mean, you still have four women who apparently are not willing to settle, at least at the terms that have been laid out for the other women. So if you're the league, I mean, I think you get caught sometimes in the trap of hearing, oh, wow, 20 settled. That means four women accusing him of sexual misconduct and or assault. That's a lot of women. Like that's still a lot of people. I mean, one is obviously more than enough. Four is still a ton. Yes, 24 now goes to four. I'd also point out, look, because people always do this and it drives me crazy with stuff like this. With Watson settling, that does not mean innocent, it just means settling. So, I think a lot of times people look at it as either an admission of guilt, which I understand the optics of that. If you're settling something, if you're giving money for something, it lends the idea of, well, you wouldn't pay if you're completely innocent. But times people do settle to move on if they can afford to do it. Now, I don't know, I'm not saying that's the case here, but my point is it is important to remember with civil suits, it is a monetary situation. It is not criminal by nature. There's no jail time or anything like that included on it. So whether or not Deshaun Watson is innocent, guilty, I don't know. What I do know is now 24 cases goes to four, but I still think for the NFL, they still face a very serious situation with Deshaun Watson. I don't think it changes, um, potential suspension or anything like that.
So, okay, you said a lot there, and I thought your initial foray was spot on because I feel a little, oh my God, we're down to four. So that's how I was kind of hearing it. Well, there's four women, four that are it's a huge number still. And um, listen, in my mind, Deshaun Watson should not play football this year. You have you had 24 civil cases. He settled 20 civil cases. You got four holding out. Your suspension is you will not play this year. Baker Mayfield, get ready. Uh, and we'll welcome Deshaun back after he's done a bunch of things that we laid out that he needs to do, and we'll see you in 2023. That's what I would do if I were the NFL. I don't, and we have seen varying reports that the suspension is going to be significant. I also find it very interesting, uh, just to recap what's actually happened. The Houston Texans were able to get 3 first-round draft picks, three,
Correct.
for Deshaun Watson. It's a hell of a haul. That's the haul you would get, you would think, for somebody his age who has nothing attached to him. He had this attached to him. They were still able to get 3 first-round draft picks. All right. He got the greatest contract in the history of the NFL for a quarterback, $230 million guaranteed,
For
as far
anybody.
as pure. Right, for everybody, for anybody.
Yeah.
These are the things that have actually happened. And then I thought of recent note, Jadeveon Clowney, who was a free agent and just decided to sign with the Browns, and his comments, quote, I was all about where my boy Deshaun was going. I just wanted to play with him and see what I could do with him again. Reminder, Clowney's not a wide receiver. He just wants to be in the locker room with this guy.
Also, I hate to be the guy who rains on the parade. They never won shit together. Okay,
Right.
ever. Two of them literally never won one thing together. But I mean, fine. Like
Eh,
Jadeveon Clowney couldn't go somewhere where there was also a good quarterback. I mean,
Well,
no, look, maybe he's friends with him and whatever. But like, let's not make it out. Like Jadeveon Clowney's comments made it out like Deshaun Watson's won like 4 Super Bowls. I mean, he's won one playoff game and blew a 24-0 lead in a playoff game in the span of 10 minutes. So let's not like look, that is beyond just the legal stuff and the civil suits and all the horrendousness that's gone on with this. That is the one kind of odd thing, just from a purely football standpoint. Look, no one would argue, if they're being honest and being fair, that Watson's not a tremendous quarterback. He's a very good football player.
yeah.
Okay. That said, Cleveland gave him $230 million guaranteed. I would argue that that contract is bonkers even without all this other stuff. Like nobody who is competing against you for this? Who who is doing this? And I know Atlanta and New Orleans and Carolina are all in on him. I understand that. But there's a reason that the day before this whole thing got done, back in March, the Browns and the Panthers were out. And then all of a sudden, he's there and he realized that he just wants to win, which of course is crap. He just saw $230 million, which is fine. I don't blame him. But you look at around, like even without this stuff, there are a handful of other quarterbacks I'd rather pay over to Deshaun Watson. And with it, there's no way I would pay him that money, which is why the Browns are who they are. But it's a fascinating situation. It's a sad situation. There's a lot of different adjectives you can use. Um, but yeah, look, I in the end, to answer the question on our screen, which is for those listening, how will this affect his potential suspension? I have felt this way for well over a month. I think he will be suspended indefinitely. I do. And I do not think we will see him this season. And I think if the NFL suspends him for less than a full season, people are going to go insane.
I don't mean to go at your opinion because your opinion might be spot on, but is that based on Verderam's sources and what you're hearing, or is it just Verderam opinion?
Which part of it?
The indefinite suspension part.
No, my opinion. My
Okay.
opinion.
Okay.
It's just the reason I say that, to be succinct on this, is I just think for the NFL, you don't want to suspend him for a determined amount of time, and then that, especially if it's less than a full season, and then that ends, and then 4 more suits come out, or a video emerges. You know what? I think if you're the NFL, you want to have that power of flexibility to say, okay, everything's settled, everything's adjudicated. Now we can move forward. Now we're going to end the suspension, or we're going to give it a definite date. Whereas if you suspend him for a determinate amount of time, yes, you can always add on to it, but then it gets messy. The NFL Players Union might fight. Like I would just say, look, you're suspended indefinitely, and I'd
Right.
leave it at that.
That makes sense. And there's not. I mean, I'd be shocked if any video came out unless he was going to people's homes, but that would be illegal to be videoing someone when you're doing a massage because you're not always in the room and all that type of stuff. So it's just whatever. Any rate, uh, and let me just say this: Deshaun Watson was one of my favorite players in the NFL. I loved watching him play. I loved his press conferences. I loved when a reporter asked him about a particular play and he questioned the reporter with respect, saying, "Well, did you play? Do you understand what I'm about to explain to you?" And then he gave a very detailed breakdown of one particular play. And I was looking at that guy, and maybe there was some Mitch Trubisky in there too, but I'm like, I really, really wish that guy, that leader, was my quarterback. And that's partly why he got or fully why he got the deal with the Browns still. But it is still amazing what everyone's looking past. And it's even more amazing, too, that Jadeveon Clowney feels free, so to speak, to go out and speak this
Oh,
praisingly, if you will, and
yeah.
not worry about how it looks whatsoever. He
You know,
just wants to support his guy.
Carm, you've been in the media almost as long as I've been alive, not to age you. So, but my point is just a compliment to you. You've been around this for a long time, longer than I've been. Seen a lot, covered a lot. The one thing I will say about this, and I'm not going to go, with names or whatever. People will figure it out, I'm sure. The way this has been covered by certain outlets has been disgraceful. Like, let me just say that. Like, I can't believe that something of this seriousness, like the hell with football. This is a story on a human level. This is a story of, in a lot of cases, and in a lot of ways, courage of women to come out and put their name to it and say, "Hey, look, this happened to me." That's hard enough. Then factor in this is one of the most powerful people in the country. Okay, when you have this kind of money and this kind of star power, and yet it's barely been covered by certain major outlets that cover this sport because of, and let's just call it what it is. Because, well, if we cover it, then what happens when this all ends? Okay, do we get the same kind of access? Is, if, I mean, Deshaun Watson is represented by a very powerful agent who I, in full disclosure, do not have a relationship with, not good or bad. I don't have a relationship with. Um, but it's like it's almost, if you've covered this league, if you understand how all this stuff works, it's like, well, we don't want to say anything bad because then will that sour relationship with other players represented. And I'm not, by the way, to be perfectly clear with this, I'm not saying there's any kind of like, overt conversation like that, but it's very clear that there were decisions made by certain outlets, like basically not to cover this in a real hardcore, not even journalistic way, but just um, news media way. And I think that's been a great disservice to a lot of these women that came out and put their names to this. And I think it's really also given the Browns a hell of a lot of cover. I really do.
Well,
Not that the Browns haven't gotten pounded on Twitter, but Twitter is different from like the rest of the world. Okay. The Browns have gotten more cover than they should have with this because I feel like a lot of times it's been buried by certain outlets that are just terrified to really delve into this stuff. And it should be delved into because even though there are not criminal complaints at this point, 10 of them were there. They were dismissed by 2 grand juries in Texas. Like this is extremely serious. And when you look at the way it's been covered, the only time Deshaun Watson's been brought up a lot in certain corners of the media has been when he signed that contract with the Browns. That was it. Like that was like the main amount of time it was talked about. I find it distasteful.
so it's very challenging for people who work in media, not to give anybody a pass here, but the reality is that you can lose your job if you go too far, if you haven't really quote unquote made it and you have that level of security that you know you'll get picked up by somebody else. That plays in. Companies are in bed um, with the NFL. That's obviously a thing. And then the other side of it is like a lot. I just want to defend the media for a second too. A lot of people like they ride the media to the end of the year. The media is terrible. The media is this fake news, all the stuff that's out there. Hey man, if the media didn't wasn't doing their jobs, Jerry Sandusky never gets caught. The media's not doing their
For
job.
sure.
It, Nasser doesn't get caught. So um, now that's media spot putting a spotlight on absolutely straight horrible people that does not have the same risk as going at the shield, so to speak. So I listen. I wish it was.
Well,
I wish it was a safer environment out there um, for and Hunter's putting in the chat here, Monte Teo as well. Listen,
that would be a wild story. Yeah.
yeah. So
Well,
uh,
you're
go
you're
ahead.
not wrong, but I guess my larger point is, and in fact, you're not only not wrong, you're right. Um, and I think people should know what they don't know, right? I mean, they should know. Like I am not a legal expert, but this is something I don't have to be a legal expert to at least discuss from a football perspective, which I think has been lost in some of these networks. It's like, look, I understand NFL Network is not going to sit there and talk about it 24 hours a day. I understand that. Okay, right or wrong, I get it. It obviously is a network that literally is an arm of the NFL media. Like I get the league isn't going to sit there and just constantly bang on a negative topic when it's a business, and of course it's not going to do that. But my larger point is, listen, and like I said earlier, and I want to be crystal clear. Watson is repped by a very powerful agent, and again, one that I have neither negative or positive things to say. If I just don't know. Um, and I don't think there's ever been any like, hey, don't talk about my guy or anything like that, because that stuff. First of all, if that's happening and you're listening to that, I mean, you're not a reporter. Okay, you're not doing your job. I'm not saying that's happened. What I am saying has happened is there have been certain decisions clearly made, like, hey, we're really not gonna publicize this in a way where we're gonna talk about it, where it's gonna be out there in a way that I think normally something of this nature would be. And yet, when he signed with the Browns, it became an all-you-can-eat extravaganza of let's talk about every single little thing about it. I get it's easier to talk about that part of it because that's football news. But look, I would applaud someone like Jenny Ventris over at the New York Times, who did God's work with this and did a lot of work and really investigated and found out that no, actually Watson had massages with 66 different women between late 2019 and the present day, at least to her reporting and her findings. Like, that's real reporting, that's real work. Um, I'm not even sitting here saying, look, we're not sitting here doing reporting on it, but we are commentating on it. I think it's important and it's fair to sit here and have discussions about this when, let's be real, this is as far as an off-field situation. I can't remember a bigger one in the NFL. 24 civil suits and 10 criminal complaints. Yes, were dismissed, but 24. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting one. I mean, obviously the Aaron Hernandez thing off the was, of course, a huge, huge story, and rightfully so. Um, that would probably be the
Yeah,
one I would immediately think of, but there's not many.
yeah. My head's spinning on that because the NFL, there's always a zillion news pieces going on of stuff off the field that is just disturbing. So I'd have to see a list. Honestly, I couldn't. I then to rank them. But Deshaun is this one just for me was completely stunning because I thought that and you
It
never
was. It was.
you never know who anybody is, but like that dude to me was as first class, down the middle, professional a dude going as there was. Like just an absolute straight pro is what I would have said about him. And clearly, I guess I have to say allegedly, whatever, just had some major, major absolute entitlement. And like if you bring up a guy like Tiger Woods, pro athletes drinking and cheating on their wives or whatever, like that's not surprising to me. This was like, oh my, you got a lot of entitlement, bro. Like just an amazing amount. So um and I hope he, as best he can, does something with this that moves this forward when it's in a positive way, if that's even possible.